Today we're going to be looking at, I think, a really important passage at the very end of Genesis. It has to do with Joseph's life, and it has to do with praying through our pain. There are some real hardships that happened in Joseph's life, and although many people were recorded in the Bible, there's very few of them actually that seemed to choose the right way most times. Daniel comes to mind. He's a Bible character, and as well as Joseph. Joseph chose the right way most of the time. He wasn't always wise with a dream that he had, and probably wasn't wise in flaunting sometimes his dad's favoritism toward him. But Joseph, being one of the youngest sons and the youngest in his when he was growing up, was actually kind of tossed to the side. He was sold into slavery by his brothers and then lied that he had been killed. They'd forgotten about him, and he had had a hardship because of that decision. There's a multiple situations that he falls into, being a slave, and then on top of that, then being in a house where he keeps doing the honorable thing and then gets kind of knocked down in situations after situations, thrown wrongly into prison, and then in prison does honorable things, and yet then finally, in this crazy movement of God, in the midst of all this, is brought to the second highest level within all of Egypt. And then lo and behold, these brothers that are in need, that come to Egypt in the midst of a famine, they're standing before him and they don't know it's him. Maybe you've read the story. It's a great story. But at the end of this, when they realize it is him and he is testing their character and actually sees that they have changed in some ways, some of the eldest brothers, there's a very end passage in Genesis chapter 50. At the very end, Jacob, his dad has died, all their dad has died, and they start wondering, okay, was Joseph just nice to us while our dad, our common dad, was alive? And Joseph heard that, wept with them, and then he said these things. He said this in Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. Do not be afraid, for at the very end, am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it or made it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So don't feel or fear. I will provide for you and your little ones. Thus, Joseph comforted his brothers and spoke kindly to them. This is a real place of a transformed life. That Joseph, through multiple situations of hardship, could have been blaming others that made bad decisions that put him there. But yet he, I believe, through his growth in relationship with God in prayer, from a prison cell, from being wrongly accused when he was honorable in a master's house, all these scenarios you can read through, come to a place where the bitterness and the wrongdoing against him did not define his identity. And it was through prayer and his relationship with God, his understanding that God is good and God was working in the midst of his own hardships to bring about good. God was not necessarily the cause, but God was working in the midst of the dark and hard situations he was in. And I wonder about us, I wonder about you today, as we come to the end of Genesis and even look at Joseph's life for a moment, what he might be able to teach us about prayer. As we look at his life and see him talking to God and even being available to God in different places and hardships of his life, we find that God has shaped him now to even through the hardships, to be able to pray his pain. I wonder today, not to stir up pain, but to be freed from pain, if there are things that are distorting your image of God or even holding you back from being able to be free in this moment. That someone else's decision that was done against you or to you actually still has power over you because it perpetuates and there's a lack of forgiveness in it. I want to encourage you today to talk to God about maybe places of unforgiveness that's in your own heart, and that you would be free ultimately, free to be able to extend grace to someone else, but also be free from it so that you'd be free for and with God to experience all the goodness he has for us. What others intended for harm, God made or twisted for good, the saving of many lives. I wonder if in your life God has written that story as you've prayed through your pain and asked God to help redeem it and see where he was at work, even when you were wronged. I'll see you tomorrow morning.